Hello, and welcome to IMU's English class. My name is Kelsey Bandine, and I'm going to be here with you today talking about when you should use the gerund and when you should use the infinitive. So first things first, what is a gerund? So a gerund is when you add ing or ing onto a verb. So a gerund is usually the second verb in a row, and what you do to the second verb is you add the ing. So walk becomes walking, laugh becomes laughing, and sing becomes singing. So I like singing, I like laughing, I like walking. Like being the first verb, and then walk, laugh, and sing being the second. Now on to what an infinitive is. So an infinitive is when you put the word to in front of the second verb. So walk becomes to walk, laugh becomes to laugh, and sing becomes to sing. So when we're using the gerund, we would say, I like walking, but when we use the infinitive, we'll say, I like to walk. When we're using the gerund, we would say, I like laughing. Using the infinitive, we say, I like to laugh. And when we're using the gerund, we would say, I like singing. And when we use the verb, we would say, I like to sing. So, when do we use gerunds and infinitives? So in English, when one verb follows another, it can either be a gerund or an infinitive. But you could never have a gerund and an infinitive in the same sentence. Now, in a lot of cases, you can pick whether you wish to use the gerund or you rather use the infinitive without changing the meaning of the sentence, and that's what we're focusing on today. There are some situations in which you have to use a gerund or the infinitive because it changes the meaning of the sentence, but today we're only going to look at the examples where using the gerund and the infinitive are interchangeable with each other. However, as just a stylistic point, in general, the gerund form does put a focus on the action, while the infinitive puts it on the preference or result. So the gerund and the infinitive. If you were to use the gerund, you would say, I love dancing. If you were to use the infinitive, you would say, I love to dance. Using the gerund, you would say, I like singing. And using the infinitive, you would say, I like to sing. Using the gerund, you would say, it began raining. And with the infinitive, you would say, it began to rain. With the gerund, you would say, I will attempt skiing. And with the infinitive, you would say, I will attempt to ski. With the gerund, you would say, I prefer walking. And with the infinitive, I prefer to walk. So hopefully this chart here makes it pretty clear what you do when you're trying to use the gerund and what you use when you're trying to use the infinitive. Okay, so now let's use gerunds and the infinitive to describe some film preferences. As you know, there are a lot of different kinds of films, so for vocab, we're going to run through a few different film categories and then all try and discuss what kinds of films we like, dislike, love, and hate based on the category. So one category of film is action movies. These are movies like the Avengers or the Marvel movies, the James Bond movies, the Hunger Games. They're usually full of action and adventure and are often very physical. Then we have romance movies, which are love stories, and as you all know, they take a lot of different tones and examples, but I put some of the more famous ones up here. I think Titanic might be the most famous of all. Then we have comedy movies, movies that are funny, that make us laugh. And then, of course, we have animated movies, which I love, and I think you all know what that are. Also, one other category we've put in there are fantasy movies. Fantasy movies are movies that take place in a different world, like Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings. So, now that we know a few different kinds of movie preferences, let's figure out how we can explain how to describe what movies we like and what movies we don't like. So, let's describe our preferences. So, if you don't like action movies, if you wanted to use the gerund, you would say, I hate watching action movies. And to use the infinitive, you would say, I hate to watch action movies. If you love fantasy movies, which I do because I love Harry Potter, you would say with the gerund, I love watching fantasy movies. And with the infinitive, I love to watch fantasy movies. If you like animated movies, which I do because I love Moana and Frozen, I would say, I like watching animated movies. With the gerund, or with the infinitive, you would say, I like to watch animated movies. If you prefer watching romance movies, so prefer meaning that you have a preference for it, you like it over other things, one would say, I prefer watching romance movies with the infinitive, with the gerund, and with the infinitive you would say, I prefer to watch romance movies. And I actually do like comedy movies, but since we have to have an example of something we don't like, you would say, if you wanted to use the gerund, you would say, I don't like watching comedy movies. And with the infinitive, you would say, I don't like to watch comedy movies. So this person hates action movies, loves fantasy movies, likes animated movies, prefers romance movies, and doesn't like comedy movies. But we can express that in two different ways using the gerund or the infinitive. So I'd like you to take a moment and just talk through what kinds of movies you like to watch and what kinds of movies you don't like to watch. Turn to a family member or friend and talk through your preferences. Do you love Harry Potter and therefore you love watching fantasy movies? Or do you prefer to watch James Bond movies, in which case you prefer watching action movies or prefer to watch action movies? So these are all examples when the gerund and the infinitive are interchangeable and you can use either. Thank you guys all so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed the class. If you had any questions at all, please reach out to me. I'd be happy to help in any way I can. Thank you.